Our app Playdate was born out of a real-world issue. We know that on the one hand, peer play is really important for social development, but at the same time, parents are busy, modern life can be quite isolating, and sometimes it's not easy for parents to connect to each other in order to set up play dates with their kids. This app was designed to take the friction out of that, to make it really super easy for parents to connect with each other, arrange sleepovers, play dates, and other events so that their children can get together and we can foster those really important social bonds.
Okay, so I'm going to be taking us through the user journey for a new user signing up to Playdate. So here we are at the splash screen, and let's go ahead and sign up. So first of all, we're going to enter our email address, and we'll put in a password as well. We'll then be taken to the Create Profile page. So this is where the user is going to enter their specific information. So we can add our profile picture, we can put our name in, we can put information about ourselves, and we can put our child's or children's names in, and we can also add our base location. So once we go ahead and create our profile, that information that we've put in will be rendered through the My Profile page. So we can see we have our profile picture, we have our name, that description that we entered, our base location, and our children's names. And we can also see that we have a couple of different options here as well to edit our profile and create an event, but we have a different demo to show you those various features. Now, if we look down at the bottom, we can see that we have a friends panel, and within here we have an initial friend. So every single new user that joins Playdate gets Playdate V as their initial friend, but we also have the option to add additional friends that we can then invite to our various different events. So let's go ahead and add Mrs. Powell as a new friend. So we've selected Mrs. Powell, and we'll click the plus button here. And we can see that Mrs. Powell is then added as a new friend. So that was a very brief demo showing a new user signing up and adding a new friend.
Oakley dokley. So we're going to take a look at Playdate, but this time from the perspective of somebody who's already signed up. So we're going to sign in. We're going to use email and password and then sign in. This is going to take us to the My Profile page. So there's three sections on this. You've got the profile at the top. We've got an events section in the middle. And then at the bottom, we've got the friends section where we can see the friends and add new ones if we want to. What we want to look at is the events section. So Ned wants to come in and create an event, but before he does, we've got these two here, which are pending events. So these are events. Mrs. Powell is inviting him boating, Clancy's inviting him on a park trip, and it's waiting for Ned to accept or decline them. If we click on My Events, we get a bigger picture, so we get to see the pending events, but we also get to see these two events that he has already accepted to go on. Now, as I said, he wants to create an event, so he could do that from here, or we could do it back at the My Profile page. So if we go back to My Profile, and we can click this one to create a new one. Now, Ned's got a tour going on of his church, so he wants to invite some folks along to that. Now, this is on the 25th of July, so if he clicks here, we can put it in using the calendar, 25th, and it starts at 6:15. So we'll find 6:15, and then it's going to finish at 7:30. So we're going to put it in. This time we can do it by typing and put it 7:30. The location will be Springfield Church, so we'll put just church because everyone else is from Springfield. And he's going to invite Homer and Mrs. Powell. So we'll put that through there and create event. Now this takes us back to the My Profile page. Now if we go onto My Events again, we'll see that we've also got the bike ride and the cinema trip, but now we've got this new event that Ned has created and invited Mrs. Powell and Homer to. So there we have, that's a whistle-stop tour of the app and the events.
For the final part of our user journey, I'm also going to be logging in as a returning user. So I'll just go ahead and sign in quickly. And there we go. You can see I'm now logged in as the user Homer. So at the top, we can see Homer's profile details and description. And if I scroll down to the bottom, we can see Homer's friends list with his currently added friends. Back to the middle, we can see Homer's pending events, along with the event that Ed has just created and invited Homer to. So from the profile page, we have the ability to accept or decline the events. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept the event for the boating activity, which removes it from the pending of events. Okay, and now onto the My Events page, we can see it's moved from the pending invitations to join Homer's other accepted activities at the bottom. At this point, Homer might realize that he has two activities on the same day and might decide that he's actually going to leave the dance event. So if I leave that event, we can see it removes Homer from that activity and just leaves his two remaining events. Homer's also going to head and decline the invitation to Ned's church tour. So that removes it from his pending of events, leaving no remaining pending events. Okay. So the final piece of functionality I'd like to share is our edit profile function. So if I go ahead and click on edit Homer's profile, and we can see, unfortunately, Homer has forgotten about Maggie. So I'm just going to go ahead and add Maggie to Homer's children. And whilst here, also update Homer's profile picture and description. Okay, so there we can see Homer's updated profile picture and all three children, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie, showing in his profile. Finally, if I go to the menu and click Sign Out, this returns us to the splash screen with the sign in option, and we notice that the menu is no longer visible.
Okay, so I'm going to be providing a 10,000-foot view of the various different technologies and development practices that we made use of and how they were stitched together as part of our project. So you can see down here at the bottom right-hand side, we have our local development environment. So we were using Firebase's local emulator, and we were also following the Git flow workflow. So anytime we made a particular change to our code, we would have to create a new branch. That branch, along with its changes, would be pushed to GitHub, and then we would issue a pull request, and then somebody else within the team would then review those changes, either approve them or provide some feedback. If they were approved, then that branch could be merged into main. Now, we were using two different Git repositories for our project. We had one for our front-end code and one for the back-end code. We thought that was important to provide a level of isolation between the various parts of the app. We were using Google Cloud's Cloud Build to act as an automated deployment pipeline. So anytime there was a change to main, that would trigger a new build job, and then we'd push an updated revision to Firebase. For the front-end React component of the application, we were using Firebase hosting, and this essentially serves up a set of static files to the end user when they type in the URL in the browser. And then for the backend, we were using Firebase functions. So the Express part of our application was essentially deployed onto Firebase functions. And this allowed us to perform CRUD-style operations against Firestore, which is a NoSQL database that contains our user and events data. For client authentication, we were using Firebase Auth, and this essentially provides us with a secure way to log in the user, provides us with a client JWT token, which we then add to the header anytime we want to make requests to the backend. It also provides a secure way to authenticate against various other Google Cloud services, such as Cloud Storage, where we were storing our user profile pictures. So there you have it. Very quick tour of our project and how the various different parts of it were stitched together.
Before we started building our app, we brainstormed ideas together and compiled it all into two documents, a planning and API document, all of which would later become good references for us during the app development. As you can see here, this is a screenshot from our API document, which showcases possible database designs. Once we decided on our user stories, we created a prototype of our app using Figma. It gave us a good visualization of what our app can look like and show us the flow of a user's journey. This was a good step into front-end development as well, as we then turn a Figma components into React components.
We used a Trello board in order to assign discrete tasks to individual team members and also to monitor the progress of those tasks as our project developed. We also used the Trello board to store user stories so that we always had that higher level overview of how we expected our users to interact with our application. We enforced naming conventions, both in terms of our React components, for instance, and our CSS styles. We tried to implement from very early on the principles of atomic design so that we were extracting where possible reusable components in order to be implemented in different parts of the project. In terms of our use of Git, we also implemented a Git flow style workflow, which involved creating feature branches, and then before merging those into the main branch, having that feature branch go through the process of a pull request and review by other members of the team, which basically enabled us to highlight any potential conflicts before they became problematic. In terms of the front-end technologies that we used HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React. React was a really important choice for us as a team because not only did it allow us to include that essential level of interactivity that the app provides, but it also allowed us to build the app from the bottom up with those atomic design principles in mind, because of the component-driven nature of the technology. We use CSS modules to try and avoid any styling conflicts. So we locally scoped style sheets to their appropriate components. We used Axios to manage our HTTP requests to the backend. We used the Firebase SDKs for authorization and storage, so protecting components and pages from users that weren't logged in, and for storing things like the profile images. We also use some third-party applications such as NPM packages for the Burger Nav and the React Spinner.
Okay, so the backend. Now the backend is a RESTful API. It was written in JavaScript, and we used the Express framework as we were familiar with it. We were able to set up two main routes, users and events, and we were also able to use middlewares for authorization and for validating the data being passed to and from the database. Since as a team we'd agreed to use the Google Cloud products for deployment and various things, it made sense to try and use the Firestore, Firebase's NoSQL database, as a good starting point for storing our app's data. The intention was that this would allow for simple structure, and this turned out to be the case. We just needed two collections, users and events, and the beauty of Firestore was it handled the indexing between them for us. Although we were new to Firestore, we felt that the documentation was well presented and there was plenty of good guidance and support, so it made it more straightforward for implementing. The Firebase emulator for localhost and development worked really well. It was intuitive to use, and we were able to create some good data for kind of manual testing and helping with the front end that imported whenever we had to rerun it, which was really useful. We used Postman extensively during the development to check and debug issues. This enabled us to test the API's endpoints with various requests and queries, and if the responses were coming back as expected or needed further development and work. But we also used test-driven development, incorporating Mocha and Supertest to generate some automated testing. This was more efficient than trying to test everything manually using Postman, and it ensured for a robust, solid, trustworthy API because we tested things thoroughly. Lastly, to ensure that the data was consistent, we used some validation, and for this we used an NPM package called Joy. This was a package we'd not used before, but again the documentation was good, which enabled us to embed it fairly straightforwardly into the project. It caused a little bit of tension when linking it up with the front end, but that was the purpose of it. It led to cleaner and more consistent data. So these were the technologies that we used in our back end.
Whilst working on our project, we encountered a few issues along the way. As we had envisaged our app to be primarily used on smartphones, we took a mobile-first approach, which did lead to some unexpected results when viewing on different screen sizes and also testing on different devices. As we had quite a large group, we inevitably had situations where we were working on the same files at the same time, and therefore had some merge conflicts to tackle, along with a few styling conflicts. But generally, our processes did a really good job of keeping these to a minimum. Due to the fact that we developed our backend and front end concurrently and also had a live and emulated version of our app, it did cause us a few problems. For example, we were working with slightly different data models on the front end and back end, which needed to be ironed out. And also we had a recurring loading spinner of death on the live site. Lastly, we had decided early on that authorization was going to be a part of our MVP, which certainly made things a little more challenging during development, but was definitely worth it in the end.
If we had more time, we would like to add the ability to suggest activities and ongoing events in your local area, and a filter to determine if an event is an indoor or outdoor, and what the predicted weather is like during that event. We would also like to add Google Maps with pinpoint location of Playdate, so there will be no worries where the location will be and if the parents are able to get to it. The ability to add Playdate event to the user's calendar so that they can be notified before or during that day of the event. The ability to search by data and people like email addresses. And lastly, to be able to view a friend's profile page which includes their bio, their location, their children's name, and their personalities, as well as your shared events. Thank you for watching our presentation. We would like to say a very big thank you to all our family and friends, and to Manchester Codes for providing the support and knowledge that made this app possible.